Well, thank you very much, and I see a few faces I know from our OARH project we're doing as well. My name is Christien Kajj, and that's April Struthers, and we will keep it on time to talk about our film festival. First we will let you a little bit know who we are and how we got to where we are, because it's not we did this project immediately out of the blue sky. We did some research as well, and April will talk about that, and how was the community involvement, and then why did it work, and what did we learn as well from all we've done, and what are the challenges. If you have any questions, probably the easiest is to save it till last, and I hope we have 5 minutes left at the end. So who we are a group of consultants, very diverse profiles. So when we take something on, we always do it probably a little bit differently because we are so diverse. We have worked in Europe, in the Netherlands and the UK, and still do so. And we work on the coastal BC and on the islands, and sometimes in Vancouver. So we bring all that experience always to our project. I'm an immigrant myself, not a visible minority, but I am a minority. So that's what we bring to our work. So we're very happy, and we do quite a lot of different projects, also homelessness projects, social housing projects. It's nice to have that broad range. So how did we get to our film festival? Well, in 2009, we were granted the contract to do the Seashell Accessibility Challenge. It was a project which is part of the Age-Friendly Community Initiatives. I don't know if some of you have heard about it, but it is really looking at a community and make it more age-friendly. They combined it as well with a disability grant, so to make it really accessible for people with disabilities. With us then, as being the project leaders, we were like, well, if you look at diversity, there is more diversity. We had really great community buy-in, so a lot of people came, and we did a lot of community development work, and came up with a vision for accessibility, which had not only a physical accessibility component, which everybody was expected, but also a very large social accessibility. And at the end of the project, the whole group was like, now we've handled this, and it's on the radar of our government, our local government, but we haven't handled like the social inclusion and the diversity aspects. And then we saw the Welcoming and Inclusive Community Grant, and the whole community said, you have to go after that grant, you should do it. So we applied. We got a grant for a Welcome and Inclusive Community Dialogue. So continued working more than about different types of diversity, also other minority groups, more cultural diversity. Did 2 dialogues, and then actually got towards the OARH project, the Organizing Against Racism and Hate project. And every time we were encouraged by the community in saying, we should go, we should continue with this work. So that's how we got to this project. A little bit more about the Welcome and Inclusive Community Dialogue. I think most of you know it. It's like a small forum of community dialogue to bring people together to talk about different diversity issues. We combine it with what with most dialogues I think do with some material and also some things leading up to that dialogue. So we did a story contest, and then we had a theater group actually explaining those stories by theater. We did also a film screening in our second dialogue, which was a diversity film from Powell River, and I see representation there. And we got such a great response about that film that it's kept us and started us thinking. And as a support of that, we created also like a visual image, which was the faces of the coast, like a button, which was distributed through the whole coast, and people were wearing that and started talking about it. So we noticed that bringing in media and different media, it really helped attracting other people and bringing dialogue to sometimes difficult topics. So when we did our evaluation, people said, we want more dialogue, and we loved the film, it opened our eyes. So with that in mind, we continued.
So you probably know for the OARH projects, the Organizing Against Racism and Hate projects, that you have 3 years to develop community capacity and to find out what's going on in your community, to do some awareness raising, and then decide where you're going to go from there on into the future. So in the first year of our project, we undertook research, and we did that with focus groups. So we had 9 or 10 self-identified groups who were all people that thought they probably had been subject to discrimination in the past. And it took about 6 months to set these groups up because it's a very sensitive set of issues, and there was a whole bunch of isms that were represented in these groups. And so through trusted intermediaries, we got a number of groups set up and created questions with our advisory group, and then found out what the experiences were of the people in these different, in response to their experiences with different isms, whether it was racism, sexism, genderism, different body shape ism, homophobia, whatever it might be. And we got, well, we had very interesting responses to that. It's the first time on the lower Sunshine Coast that we'd ever done that kind of research and named it as such, and that seemed really important to people. And while it took some time to organize these groups, there was a richness that came out of our dialogues. And indeed, the focus groups, which can be pretty cut and dried, each of them turned into dialogues. People didn't want to stop talking once we had broached subjects in a safe way. And we had to guarantee high degrees of sensitivity, and we had to guarantee confidentiality in every which way, because any of you in small communities know that everybody knows everybody else. They think they know everything about everybody else. And of course, there are both private and secret aspects to people's lives that need to be protected very carefully, which we kind of managed to pull off. So the research gave us a basis then to go to the community and say, these groups, as well as key informants, spoke about what they experienced. And what we found is that if people had not experienced discrimination, they did not believe it existed in the community. So having the experiences from these focus groups allowed us to challenge that, to just say, well, that might be your experience, but look what your neighbors are saying. And there was a series of findings that came out of that. Some of the findings were around what assets do we have. And we identified a number of huge strengths that were just below the surface. And unless you had been dealing with those groups or had a particular interest, you wouldn't know about those in a general community way. So we were able to surface the strengths that we had to counter some of the negative social forces that we were naming in our research. And indeed, that set of finding from the research, we're still taking it out to the community, because people have started to request to find out what goes on. All this stuff is just below the surface, even in really small communities. It has to be brought out slowly and in really a safe way. And so we're continuing to do that on into the third year. In the second year of the project, we moved into awareness raising, building on the assets and what we'd found out from the first year. And that was really important, that we actually did research to find it out. Wasn't just our assumptions, wasn't just the assumptions of the people with privilege or power in our communities, that actually we were able to bring the spoken word from different groups out back to the community. We built on existing material, so the preceding dialogues, the material, promotional material, and things like the buttons that we had produced, we continued to use them. And we started to talk in terms of the isms, making sure that people knew how widespread the isms were, and that all of us probably could fall into a category of ism if we just thought about it a bit. The results of the awareness campaign were that we produced a number of postcards, and I actually have some with me if anybody is interested in seeing them. These are the images of the postcards, and that came from the stories, from the story contest earlier on. Now, the postcards are a great way to spread difficult to talk about subject material out to your community, because they're quite attractive, and people are willing to place those in their stores, in their organizations, where they might not be with other kinds of material. And on the back, there's a link to the website where you can actually read the stories, both positive and negative stories about when people came to the Sunshine Coast. Were they welcomed and included or not? And the stories are on the District of Sechelt website, and the support of local government for doing that has been significant, because people believe that this is a credible effort since we are linked to an official website. The other result was a film festival. We'd shown the Defining Diversity film from Powell River at one of our other dialogues. It had been greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. So our advisory group said, let's go ahead with developing more film festivals. Oops, I'm going backwards, as you so often do in community work before you turn around and go forwards again with your team. We had a small team and a number of kind of extraneous volunteers who just got hauled in because they were relatives or friends or whatever. We also partnered in a very important way with Candace Campo, who's a member of the Seashafts band, and who helped us to create a bridge to the band, and she has continued and is continuing on with us every time that we represent this material. But it was very significant to have a band member co-hosting our film festivals. So, the community involvement. Of course, we had a community committee, which was very active, small but active, very committed, and they continued to train themselves up over the time that we worked together, took every opportunity that was offered through the funding or through other groups, partner groups that we worked with, to raise their own awareness. And we've heard today about people's personal change that comes about by working in this field. Certainly our advisory group members would identify that as being hugely significant, unexpected but significant for them. We selected themes based on what had come out of the dialogues before and out of the stories, and then it was up to us to research the films. And that took a whole bunch of time. I have to say, if you're going to do a small-scale film festival, be prepared for 20 or 30 hours of figuring out what your sources are for films and which films you're going to select. There's loads of sources out there that are free, and other film projects that you can probably use their material. We had an ongoing dialogue with the committee over choosing the films. That became a real hot issue. And we also went around the community and talked a lot about if you were going to watch films, what would you want to see? And we developed our partnerships through this too, so people were made more active in terms of partnership. To produce the film festival, we had to build a program. We had to figure out how to do stuff in a short time. We had 2 hours for our program, half an hour dialogue, hour and a half films, and a short break. We had to do all the usual promotion. We had to select locations, and that was a bit dicey because you want your film festival to not be necessarily professional, but not to be so grassroots that you can't get the films to play, which was our experience in some of the venues. So you have to be very careful and test all that out beforehand. And we had to find other presenters and work out some techniques of how we were going to work together. The other thing that was really important was to produce materials, and we have with us examples of 2 of the kinds of materials that we produced. We used a professional graphic artist to do this, and it made a big difference to people paying attention to this initiative or not. I don't know where you come from, but where we live on the upper and lower Sunshine Coast, there's huge competition for community time. There's loads and loads of things going on. There's probably 5 or 6 significant things every weekend. Then there's festival season. And so to get attention paid to your project, you really need to have some eye-grabbing material. That's something we learned, and we would say devote some of your budget to that if you can. And we had to overcome the challenges, all the usual challenges. You heard some of them in the preceding project, and some challenges that were specific to film festivals. We had the usual kinds of promotion. So the newspapers were very active. We used our community television and radio. And we failed to get some additional money we were expecting for promotion to buy big ads. But our MP stepped up and did some advertising for us just around the theme of diversity and the fact that we were actually producing something which impressed him, apparently, which is a good thing.
So briefly something about the film. So as April said, the themes came out of the research and the dialogue we had. And then it's finding films that are really appropriate because there are so many films out there. So we looked also at what really speaks to the people living on the coast. And that's why we decided to show a documentary from Powell River again, because a lot of the issues that are reflected there are actually the same as in Seychelles. We also spoke with other our OARH network partners, and in Comox they produced a really nice documentary as well, a 15-minute documentary, really addressing also a lot of the isms that were going on. While at least the Powell River diversity film is more about cultural diversity, with some other aspects in that, but the COMOX was really about the whole range of diversity, which was really nice. We looked also at diversity in work situations. How does it work? And we had some youth films there. And we were very proud as well to find a film that was made by the Seashell band Youth. So we showed that, and we noticed that people really appreciated it. We looked as local as possible and addressing the themes that really did matter. So a little bit the venue. So we went to the Gibson's Heritage Playhouse, and what we found as well is very important, that it's a neutral position, that everybody feels welcome there. And because of our partnership with the Seashell Nation, and I don't speak light about this because we've been working for 3 years in Seashell doing diversity projects, and this is the first time that we found something how we could connect. And it allowed us as well to welcome everybody into their community hall, and a lot of people had never been there. So it was a huge step to have that venue. We closed the dialogues with dialogue tables, and actually in the Heritage Playhouse, people just stayed in their seats and turned around and talked because we weren't able to have tables there. But questions we asked was what kind of impact did it have, those films, and what would you take from this, and what would you do different now? And the dialogues coming out of it, it really opened people's eyes. People were not aware. And it was nice to see that a lot of different people came out. Youth came out with their parents sometimes. So the audience response was impressive. They really wanted to have more. They didn't want to go home. They were wondering when we were going to do another film festival, and I think they liked also the balance between films, but half an hour dialogue. That's as much as people probably often can handle. And what I said, a lot of new people came out, youth came out, and it's always hard, as many of you know, to attract youth. You always get certain people that you always see, and now we saw a lot of different people. We had a lot of support from government, so some key people in the community, some really people that are able to make changes came out and supported us. So yeah, very positive.
We also had unexpected response from partners. Now, in any project, you usually have a group of partners who walk the talk with you, who talk the talk and walk the talk. Then there will be a group of partners who talk the talk. You hope in succeeding years that they will then walk with you in a different way, and that's part of the outreach work. What we did find is that we had partners coming forward that we didn't know we were partners with yet, so we became very popular. And that was unexpected. People wanted in, people came to the film festivals and afterwards stayed to make offers, tangible offers of what they wanted to do, to enlarge this next year, to continue to do this, and to make it a sustainable legacy project. That's how people talked about it. They want to see a film festival on diversity every year on the Sunshine Coast. And the Seashell Band said that they wanted to continue to be part of that, and if possible to support maybe one night being purely an Aboriginal film festival. Over these last few months, the festival has continued to be invited to produce itself once again, so myself and partners have been trotting around our variety of communities. We are a set of ribbon communities along 80 kilometers of highway. Each community sees itself as separate. And so if you're actually going to reach people, you need to travel for this. We found that having a tangible, marketable product made a huge difference. You could talk forever about the values, about human rights, about things that are intangible that we think are incredibly important. And I do. I'm a human relations consultant, so I live by intangible products. But unless people can see them, point at them, see them in the newspaper, and have their neighbors talk about them with the flyer, that makes a huge sea change. Challenges, there were none, obviously. 2 grants fell through, so we really had to scramble. We had auxiliary grants, and we were pretty sure we were going to get them. But for 2 different technical reasons, we didn't. The partners took up the slack, but there was limited coverage. We could have got loads more people there with paid newspaper advertising. We had the usual technical challenges, which included the mounting of a film festival challenges. And we only had 2 local governments of 4 respond, even though we invited and did outreach to all of them. So there's work to be done around that. The 2 that did respond have really begun to understand how important it is to have this kind of thing happening in the community. There's a steep learning curve if you're going to be doing film programming, and the way that partners developed did not match the timeline that we needed to have happen and fitting into the schedule. How's our time? 3, 4 minutes. Great.
You want to see the film?
Do you want to talk about what did we learn?
Yeah, well, go. Okay. Let's quickly go, because we brought a film and we thought you might want to see one of them. So what did we learn? All the things I think you know as community developers. People just need time. We can have a funding deadline, and it's a year funding, but to develop things, it just takes a lot of time. It takes time for people to feel ownership, but if you have local government on board, they can be very efficient, and it's really great to have supporters, and you may be more successful. But for us, it's always like we have to be patient, and we have to trust that all the work we're doing actually brings us where we want to go. We think that it's for difficult issues, film is a really good venue to bring in the crowds that normally don't come, and it is reasonable. You can keep it reasonably inexpensive as well, which we found is very important. And there are a world of Aboriginal films, if you don't know that you can bring in. You do need a coordinator or a facilitator at the meeting to lead it, because there are sensitive topics, and you have to be able to handle that. And well, in this case, we were the consultancy and not a not-for-profit agency, and we've always seen that as a big problem. And we've been advocates in our community that there is a not-for-profit stepping up, because we see ourselves as coming in and doing great projects, but we are not an ongoing entity. But there is no ongoing entity that wants to take it on in Seychelles, so we really struggle with that. And so we keep raising it and try to find partners that do step up and see it as a very important issue. If everybody wants to, we could show you quickly one of the films. It's a 1-minute film. Do we have time for that? Yeah? Okay. So this is actually our core group of our consultancy firm, and we have a website, alofi.com, if you want to know more about us. And now I have to end. Escape. And then, is this the one?
Hey, I'm Jimmy. Can you guess what I like to do in my spare time? Nope, that's not it. Nope. Are you kidding me? Because of the color of my skin, some people have misconceptions on what I like to do during my spare time. Some Canadians don't like hockey, but I do.
I think we have 1 more minute for questions. We take it all. So if I can, is there any questions people would like to ask? No? Okay, thanks. This is actually a film was made by, it was a government-funded project to ask schools to submit films, 1-minute films talking about diversity. And every year they have this competition, so we approached them and asked them if we could use the film, and they were really, really happy that we did it. But it's a North Vancouver film. So, thanks.